this debt, this destruction.
Global news impacts us.
We have to change the way we live. This is why we need independent media.
Cheers and salutations. Welcome to another episode of Hard Lens Media. We got a lot to talk about, especially now in this day and age where right now we need more independent voices out there on social media, people speaking truth to power. And today I'm joined here with one of the members of Midwest Marxist. Again, his name is Carlos Garrido. He is one of the members of this show. And not to mention, if you are familiar with them, you might have seen a couple of their members on shows like RBN and a few others. And now, without further ado, to talk about the need for independent movements, third parties, and breaking away from the two-party neoliberal system, joining me here is Carlos. Thank you so much for joining us. We got a lot to talk about for this segment, and especially in regards towards how 2024 will play out. So first and foremost, please introduce yourself to our viewers and subscribers. This is your first time on our show, and tell us a little bit about the foundation and the creation of Midwest Marxist. Give us a little bit of background, who you guys are.
Well, first, thank you for having me on, Kit. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Carlos Garrido. I'm a Cuban-American philosopher. I teach philosophy at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, where I received my master's, and I'm currently finishing my dissertation work for the PhD. A few years ago, I founded the Midwestern Marx Institute with my friend and co-director, Eddie Lager-Smith. It's a broad Marxist institute which aims to provide in as comprehensive a fashion as possible Marxist theoretical education and political analysis, both of our country but also geopolitical analysis. It has various aspects to it, from short video content like our TikTok, which is perhaps the most popular part of the institute. We were able to develop it when we first started to around 400,000 followers. We were getting regularly a few million views each week on individual videos. And when the special military operations began, we had that account fully banned because of the message we were bringing about challenging the narrative of the U.S. and NATO empire on the war. We had that account banned, and since then we've created 7 other accounts, one of which, again, got to a few 100,000 followers and was also banned. And we've had a bunch of accounts banned in that area, but those are short videos that are sort of the basic foundational stone of the Institute. From there, we pour people into our website, where we publish articles on theory, history, politics, to our publishing press, which has been running for about 2 years now, where we publish books on Marxist philosophy, Marxist history, political analysis, and adjacent subjects, U.S. socialist history. We also have an academic scholarly journal, the Journal of American Socialist Studies, which is published by the same publishing press. And we also have a variety of YouTube shows where we do interviews and long live streams reacting to stuff. And yeah, that's a lot of us work on the ground with various socialist and communist parties, but come together to do media work online through the Institute, which is composed of not just the directors and editors, but a staff of around 50 or so writers from around the world.
Well, first of all, that's fantastic. And let me apologize. I said the name of your group wrong. It's Midwest Marx, and I apologize for that. But real quick, I want to do a quick follow-up. Has there been any kind of commentary or at least any kind of feedback about why your TikTok accounts were banned or why they were censored? Has there been any attempt to try and get that back? Because, again, we here at Hard Lens Media, we've been censored by YouTube 8 times, and we know a lot of our other colleagues in independent media, no matter where they stand on the political spectrum, as soon as they start speaking out against the two-party system or corporate media, occasionally there's going to be some trigger words that will upset the algorithm. What exactly happened to you guys, especially to your content? Because, again, when you're getting, 400K plus followers, all right, that's a pretty big deal, especially in this day and age of social media where everyone is watching everything at a second. What was there any kind of commentary or feedback, or are you guys still left wondering what happened?
Well, the control over the U.S. TikTok was switched from a Chinese company to an American company. That was part of the settlement during that war that Trump started on TikTok and that Biden proliferated and has continued proliferating. And a part of that switch has also been um, a transformation in the content moderation. Um, as Alan McLeod from the Mint Press News Collective has shown, now a lot of the people that are deciding what content stays up and which one gets banned on TikTok are State Department agents, people that are related directly to U.S. and NATO State Departments, who get to decide what content, when it blows up, what stays up, and what comes down. So we had, for instance, with the case of the Nord Stream bombing last year, we were on our like third or fourth account, and neoliberal TikTokers posted that the Russia blew up its own pipeline.
Are you talking about those spazoids who constantly keep on screaming about Biden in like one
No,
minute
it was.
videos?
I'm sure they did it too, but I'm thinking specifically of another person. The person who directs that part of our institute is primarily Eddie, so he'd probably remember the name. But I think it might have been Philip DeFranco, but it could have been someone else. But
Really?
they
Wow.
they were touting the propaganda that Russia blew up its own pipeline, and anyone who had been following the situation even somewhat closely and was even a little bit critical of the U.S. NATO narrative would have known that that's absurd. So we were voicing that, talking about how absurd it would be for Russia to blow up its own pipeline and how it was likely the U.S. and there were signs to point to why it would be the U.S. and evidence such as Biden saying, if you step into Ukraine, we'll blow up Nord Stream, which is pretty dumb for a world leader to do. Um,
Mhm.
but our content got banned. That video got taken down. The account got banned pretty soon after. And the people who got it wrong, who lied, their videos still got millions of views. They stayed up and their accounts are still up. So that's the sort of transformation that you got from that switch towards the control of TikTok to an American company. The algorithm is much more manipulated so that whatever narrative benefits imperialism and the dominant hegemonic narrative of the lapdog media, that's the narrative that gets boosted. Whatever challenges that, especially in more difficult moments, that narrative gets taken down and gets banned.
Wow. I'm very sorry that happened to your content. I do hope that you guys can get some justice. The last thing I want to see is any content creator, no matter where they are on the political spectrum, whether they're Marxist or socialist, libertarian, conservative, Republican, to be censored because, again, I believe in the First Amendment and free speech. And if you have to silence somebody or discredit them, that means that they're speaking truth to power. And not to mention, how can we forget the infamous New York Times article that said maybe it's best we don't know who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline? I don't know. Did you see that infamous article that came out?
Yeah, and there's that recent one that they did too, which was something along the lines of, um, the Nazis in Ukraine are feeding
Yes.
into the Russian propaganda that there's Nazis in Ukraine, which is it's a self-defeating, it's a contradictory title because on one part of the title you admit there's Nazis, and on the other part you say that the people who say that are propagandists.
Well,
So either way you interpret it, the propagandist is the person who wrote the article and the media station who put it forward.
so in other words, I kind of made this joke about that New York Times because I know what article you're talking about. Uh, hey guys, stop wearing that Nazi iconography. It's making it difficult for us to lie for you. But speaking of lying, let's talk about a big grift that's happening. And this is actually on your content. This is one of your colleagues. And again, this has to deal with 6.2 billion disappearing since we're talking about the war in Ukraine, neoliberal lies, and so much more. You think there'll be any kind of follow through on this? Here, let's play this video for the people.
Sometimes I feel like we live in a movie, and not like a really smart movie, but like an Adam Sandler comedy. Not Uncut Gems, but Billy Madison. Because the Biden administration and the Pentagon are trying to tell us that due to an accounting error, they now have $6.2 billion extra dollars to give to Ukraine for military aid. That's right. They just counted the weapons wrong. And now they're saying that there's no more need to ask Congress for an additional aid package to Ukraine. They'll just send them this $6 billion. So they no longer have to convince the American public to have their tax dollars used on a proxy war with Russia. They'll just continue funding the proxy war with Russia with our tax dollars without having to ask. Seems really convenient for the Biden administration and the Pentagon officials who want to continue fueling this proxy war. So what do you guys think? Was there actually an accounting error? Or are they just using this as a way to send more weapons to Ukraine without having to ask Congress? I have my suspicions.
Suspicious. I have to wonder what happened. How did they find all that money? Now, isn't it a miracle, an accounting error? Hey, 6.2 billion, but yet it doesn't go to the people of East Palestine, Ohio. After all, how can I forget so many infamous, heartwarming liberals saying, "Oh, those people in East Palestine, Ohio deserve it because they're probably Trump supporters." What about the people of Flint, Michigan? You know, when Obama did his infamous drinking the water. God, that is so scummy. My skin crawls when I think about Obama even doing that. He's a scumbag through and through. Or what about the people of Hawaii who had their underground water contaminated? What about Chicago, my hometown, Obama? We got lead in our drinking water, and oh boy, you won't believe the amount of contaminants that are being polluted into Lake Michigan. But anyways, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a mistake. Maybe I'm overreacting here. What are your thoughts on this? Because again, that's outstanding video work from your colleague from Midwestern Marxist. So, share your thoughts.
I don't know what I'm more pissed at: the 6.2 billion or the fact that he painted Uncut Gems in a favorable light. It might be a horrible movie. He shouldn't have done that. There will be repercussions.
Oh my goodness! Oh no! Did I cause a civil war? Now I don't want that on my conscience now.
No, but I mean, if you look at the statistics, the American people are tired of this war. They don't want their government to continue funding neo-Nazis to fight a war that's not in their interest, right? The U.S. Political puppets and the political class are always talking about America's interest and America's interest, but it's never really the interest of the American people, of American working families. It's always the interest of the elites who are in the pockets of these politicians and who are the reason why policy goes one way and not the other. And it's no different here with Ukraine. The difference is that the scale has been much larger, but we've been spending billions of taxpayer money on projects to try to overthrow other countries for decades. In the last 2 decades, for instance, we've spent more than $2 billion in alternative media and in different sources that are aimed at overthrowing the Cuban government. We've gotten nowhere. And, you know, we spend similar billions of dollars in trying to overthrow the governments that exist outside of the sphere of influence, those governments which don't allow their country's resources and their people's labor just to be expropriated and exploited by American multinational corporations. And, you know, we've sent more than 150 billion to Ukraine, to an area where the main fighting is being led by literal neo-Nazis. And we've known about the neo-Nazis. We've been reporting it since 2014 after the coup. And it's a very scary situation because it's the normalization of something horrific such as neo-Nazis. But the American people, I don't think, the vast majority of them are not falling for it. It's primarily a middle-class position that's very aligned to the Democratic Party and to their narrative that's falling for it, and that's a smaller and smaller and smaller portion of the country.
And not to mention, you know, when we think about 150 billion, I find it interesting because we hear this from both Republican and yes, Democratic lawmakers that are protected by the quote unquote squad members. Because yes, AOC and Bernie Sanders are shielding the neoliberal Democrats. Whenever people ask about Medicare for all, student debt forgiveness, rebuilding our infrastructure, bailing out the working class. I mean, hell, homeowners are losing their homes. It's impossible to rent an apartment. Small businesses are being shut down. No matter where you stand across the political spectrum, Americans in general are being abandoned. And recently, you know, I saw the film They Live. And even though that film was done in 1988, the words in that goddamn movie still resonate today. It's almost click, copy, paste of what we're dealing with in 2023. And what's interesting enough in seeing that film, there's a point where one of the leaders of the aliens that are, you know, consuming humanity or, keeping us docile, is saying by 2025 we will be meeting our goals. And I'm like, oh Jesus, it's 2023 right now. How how horrifically brutal and frightening at the same time. So the thing is, people are asking now, what can we do now? Because it seems like if there's been any attempt to try and do something, there was this one spark in 2016, and I'm hesitant enough to say that the Bernie Sanders movement could have done that, but it seemed like that was the moment at the time, and now we saw what Bernie Sanders did. Is there anything that we can do, or is it just, are we just yelling into the wind at this point?
Well, the reason why they need to continue spending millions and billions on these lies and on getting the American people to believe them is because even when we feel down and feel pessimistic about our potential, they don't. They wouldn't spend so many resources trying to indoctrinate us with lies and with topsy-turvy views of the world if we were just powerless and if we didn't have the potential to change it. The fact that they do that, it's because they know that we can change the world if we understand truth and organize in a revolutionary manner. And there's this famous quote from Julian Assange, who is someone who what they're doing to him is just horrific. But he says, if wars can be started by lies, peace can be started by truth. And I think that today, telling the truth is a absolutely revolutionary act. It's an act that can get your livelihood destroyed. We've had people in our institute who've gotten fired because of the work that they've done, exposing the narrative on the proxy war against Russia. But it's fundamental because it allows us to have some form of ideological clarity about the world that we live in today. And if we're able to understand why it is that we're in such deep shit, we're able to understand the ways in which we can get out of that deep shit better. And so telling the truth is dangerous. It challenges the narrative of empire, which is a narrative that's grounded on lies and on deceiving the people while they at the same time promote their censorship campaigns and the promotion of their lies as what's a war on disinformation or something. It's always projection what they end up doing. But the fact that they spend so many resources and manipulating us and manipulating our thoughts shows that even when we feel down and feel like we can't change the world, they don't. So I think the stuff that Hardlands Media is doing, the stuff that the Midwestern Marx Institute is doing, the stuff that RBN is doing, is what we have to do. Is get at the people, tell them the truth, show them how their government and their bosses are in bed with each other and don't actually represent them, and that this is not an eternal phenomenon that's God created or natural, that this is something that's historical. The system we live in is a relatively new system in human history. It's 500 years old or so, give or take. And it's changeable, but it's not going to change just on its own. It's going to change if we're able to organize, understand what it is that we're changing, and fight in a revolutionary fashion. And there was a spark in 2016. Bernie was calling what he was doing a political revolution, and that awoke many consciousness of people that were apolitical or too young to be political. And that hasn't gone away. You still see poll after poll that specifically younger generations from 18 to 35, they have a more favorable view of socialism than they do of capitalism. And that's a big change in the consciousness of the generations that will be the future of America, especially considering how many resources have been spent on anti-communist propaganda and manipulating the way that people think about alternatives to capitalism. So, when Bernie lost, a lot of people came to the idea that the problem was not perhaps systemic, that it was specific to the two-party system. And what many people desired in 2020 and after was a third-party run, an independent party that was not bought off by different sections of the ruling class that agree on on the fundamental things. They agree basically full on. And I think that's what we're seeing now with Cornel West. It's a eco-socialist party that he's running through. He's running as a revolutionary Christian socialist, and he's bringing a message of unifying the American working people, fighting against war. Even though he makes some statements that I think we should still question. But it's a message that I think it's tremendously popular, and that will help us move beyond Bernie. In Marxist theory, we have a concept called sublation, which is that something comes about, and by the natural force of history and movement, a part of it is canceled, and the more rational part is then continued into something new. I think that's what we're seeing as far as the relationship of Bernie to Cornel West. The rational part of Bernie is sustained. The irrational parts, the parts that supported empire, that tied itself up to the two-party system, the two-party duopoly, that has been removed. So it's definitely a higher form of political activity that we're seeing with Cornel West, and hopefully that helps develop in the American people a more developed, enhanced, richer consciousness, class consciousness.
Now, the thing about Dr. Cornel West, and I do support the Green Party actually being on the ballot, and dare I say it, going further to be on the debate stage. I feel like there should be a rise of independent movements. The same thing goes for libertarians. I've been consistent about that. I want to see all the independent parties get on the ballot, get on the debate stage. But the one thing that we've heard from 2016 and yes, in 2020 and even afterwards, but hell, this was even going on when Ross Perot was running because Republicans blame him because Bill Clinton beat Bush Sr. Ralph Nader was vilified because Bush Jr. defeated Al Gore. We hear this from corporate media and diehard vote blue no matter who's sycophants, and yes, even conservative Republican voters. If you vote third party, you're going to help the other party win, and especially from the vote blue no matter who crowd. If you're running as a third party candidate, you're opening the door for fascism. You're going to help Donald Trump. How do we break that narrative? Because the thing is, corporate media has done a fantastic job in, well, making people fall asleep. And we both know that this is not true. I mean, look, if I'm going to vote third party, if I'm going to vote Green or Libertarian or whoever, that said candidate earned my vote. I'm not helping Trump. I'm not helping Biden. I am voting for somebody that's earned my vote. Your thoughts on it? Because you know they're going to be amplifying this entire statement. I mean, already we're seeing people vilify Dr. Cornel West as somebody that's going to help Trump. Well, let's shine a light on that.
Well, it's based on the assumption that there is a difference between the two parties that is qualitative. That's a substantial difference. Where one party, the Republicans, is bringing forth a fascist threat, is a fascistic party, and the other party is just simply a liberal party that might not represent the people, but at least is not fascist. And I think that's grounded on a misunderstanding of what fascism is, and the relationship of fascism to capitalism and the capitalist state, and the role of violence and the role of attacks on democratic rights of working people and the masses. Because what we've seen is really that both of the parties are parties of the capitalist class, of the big monopolists, who unite on war and imperialism, and who both have very fascistic policies. The difference is that one of the fascist party is liberally minded on social issues, and the other one is not. This idea that you can fight a fascist threat in the Republican Party by voting for a party that has sent more than 150 billion to neo-Nazis in Ukraine, that has given tens of millions of dollars, as we saw the last election cycle, to the most far-right sections of the Republican Party, that has expanded policing, that has expanded prisons, that has expanded the security state, that has expanded censorship, that has expanded militarism and the militarization of the police here at home, that has done all of these fascistic policies, that illegalized the democratic rights of the rail workers to strike, that has cut social programs, that has created a condition where, as we're giving more than 150 billion to Ukraine, and there's 6.2 apparently that was just an accounting error. Our people are struggling to live. More than 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. They're on the brinks, a lost paycheck away from joining the 600,000 homeless Americans wandering around in a country with 33 times as many empty homes as homeless people. We have a condition where like 1 in 8 children goes to bed hungry, while we throw away 40% of our food supply. Like, the American people are struggling. They cannot continue in the old way. And I don't think the ruling class itself can continue in the old way. And we're approaching a very serious crisis of legitimacy. Only around 20 or so percent of the American people feel like their representatives represent them.
That's a generous number that you just said, 20%, because I remember seeing previous reports where like only 11% have approval rating of our government or Congress. I mean, 20, that's a high number, but but nonetheless, I mean, still it's a low number, but that's very generous right there of you to give them 20% to 20% of the population.
The last one that I saw was 20%, and the media was 11%. 11% felt like the media was honest. So the media ratings are even lower. But the point is that the overwhelming majority of the American people do not trust their politicians. They do not trust the media. They feel like they cannot continue to live in the old way. And the paradox is that the ruling class also cannot continue in the old way. These bickerings between the Trump part of the Republicans and the rest of the elite class show that there's tensions within the ruling class itself. And, you cannot think about the American ruling class divorced from what it's been able to do for the last 70 years abroad.
Agreed.
You can't divorce national politics from international politics. And the reality is that the global power of the U.S. empire is diminishing very, very quickly. It's unable to do the things it would have been able to do with ease 30 years ago. You see this with the failed proxy wars, failed coup attempts in Venezuela and Cuba, Nicaragua, and Bolivia, where they succeeded for a year in putting a fascist coup president and then just lost the following election cycle within a year. So their power internationally is crumbling. There's estimates that by 2030, international trade in the dollar, we've had dollar hegemony for a very, very long time, for 5-6 decades. International trade in the dollar is going to plummet to around 30%. And that's assuming that we don't continue doing very stupid things that lead to it plummeting even faster. And that dollar hegemony has been the source of the empire's most important tool within their toolbox, which is sanctions. Sanctions regimes which are horrific and really only affect the people. So we're getting to a condition where in old Marxist terms would be described as objectively revolutionary conditions. The people cannot continue living in the old way. They don't believe their government. There's a crisis of authority. And the government itself, the ruling class, cannot continue in the old way. So all that's missing, if those are the objective conditions, is what we've called in my tradition the subjective factor. We need to change the people's minds. We need to organize them in a revolutionary manner. It's not enough for people to hit the streets by the tens of millions whenever they get discontent because the police state kills a black person. It's important that with that, you also have revolutionary organizations. Just people throwing themselves out into the street ends up functioning, if there's no organization, as a sort of libidinal release of anger, and that neutralizes their potential. We need to organize and have clarity about why it is that in the everyday life of people, they find it harder to continue living in the old way. You need to have a systematic analysis of the system that we live under, and a understanding of how it is that we can move forward. And the only way we can move forward is by organizing the people in a revolutionary manner.
All right, that's a fantastic note to end it on. I know that right now we're running a little bit short on time, but I definitely want to help promote your channel here. But before we do, we spoke a little bit before the show started. And you know what? I got to challenge you on something. And I need to ask you, where's your heart for the billionaires? I mean, come on. We've got a couple at the bottom of the ocean by Titanic. And unfortunately, as it stands right now, they're out of air. They're out of air. And you told me that your wife was giving you some updates about it.
She doesn't stop talking to me about the fucking. Can I curse? I'm sorry. She doesn't stop talking to me.
It's okay. It's okay. You could swear.
I haven't seen it online. It hasn't. Thankfully, it hasn't popped up in my algorithm. But every time I come across, she's talking about it.
Let me share this with all of you. Now, again, look. I don't wish this on my worst enemy, okay? Being at the bottom of the ocean, the pressure, the insanity, knowing you have 96 hours of oxygen. Now, look, folks, I hate to break it to you. They're dead. But here, this is just, you're going to get a short summary, Carlos. You're going to get a short summary. So here we go.
This submarine story just hurts my soul so much, especially because I can only imagine how terrifying it must be, being stuck on the bottom of the ocean in a small vessel where you can't even stand.
That's the controller. A wireless PlayStation 3 frickin' controller.
That explains
PlayStation
so
3.
many memes. That explains so many memes I've seen in the last couple of days now.
God damn it.
And up. There are no seats and only one toilet, a small black box with a black curtain drawn across for privacy. All passengers are barefoot and must sit on the floor. Also, the fact that experts are saying there is no way of rescuing the crew if the tiny craft is still thousands of feet under the sea, because the technology required doesn't exist. Apparently on Tuesday, they heard banging sounds in 30-minute intervals. This would mean that they are still alive. A lot of fears were that the vessel had imploded. So that means the vessel must be stuck on the ocean floor. This submarine is designed to float to the surface when something goes wrong, and it hasn't done that, so they're stuck. But what is it stuck under? It could be stuck inside of the Titanic. They may have went directly inside of the rusted ship, and who knows? What if the Ocean Gate vessel caused the Titanic to collapse? What if the banging sounds were the Titanic falling apart? I'm just assuming here. But it could also be floating at the surface. In that case, Starlink should be able to locate them. So it seems most likely they are stuck below. Food and water are the least of their worries right now. It is thought that if the vessel had the full 96 hours worth of oxygen when it went down, it would run out at around 11 a.m. on Thursday, June 22nd morning.
Today is June 22nd. It's 9:38 a.m. 9:38 a.m. Central Standard Time. Now, again, different time zone to where they're at. I hate to break it to all of you wonderful people who are tuning in, but they're out. $250K to go to the bottom of the ocean. And by the way, Carlos, I don't know if you noticed, but there's no other way to access to getting out of the submarine except through the entrance, which is bolted and hatched down. So they need to get the specialized bolt tool just to open up that hatch. Your thoughts about billionaires at the bottom of the ocean and the distraction for the time being that kept us all glued to our phones from Monday morning of this week.
Oh, well, thankfully I wasn't one of those all, and my wife was, which is disappointing. But yeah, I mean, look, as I consider myself a communist, I'm guided by a very humanistic ethic. I wouldn't wish that level of suffering on anyone.
No.
So some of the things that I've seen here and there online that are now starting to make sense. I wouldn't phrase those sorts of things. I wouldn't be happy at what's happening. But let's be honest, it's also a terrible death when people die of hunger or when people die of malaria and other preventable diseases that are rooted in poverty. And it's also a terrible death when people's homes get bombed. Or when, babies aren't able to last more than a couple years because the US and NATO dropped uranium depletion bombs on their areas, as they did in the former Yugoslavia and Iraq, I believe, and as they have opened it up to doing in the proxy war against Russia. So, there's hundreds of millions, if not, hundreds of millions of people that are dying horrific deaths that are also needless and that are rooted in the capitalist imperialist system that dominates the world. So, I think that this hysteria over the submarine is warranted. It's a tragic death, but we should also remember the fact that there's similar tragic deaths that are needless, that are being caused by the system that is now spending God knows how many resources rescuing these people.
That's a fantastic note to end it on. I want to thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Thursday morning joining Heartlands Media. To our viewing audience, this is the link tree to Midwestern Marx. Please follow their work, support their work on social media. They do a lot of great stuff. They've been on so many other shows, including Revolutionary Blackout Network. This right here is their Twitter account as well. I think now more than ever, we need more independent voices, especially in this sphere and in this day and age of censorship. So as always, folks, keep speaking truth to power. Carlos, thank you so much for being on our show. And again, we do hope to have you back on. And who knows what's going to lie in store for us as we are still in 2023. 2024 is still around the corner, and this election cycle is already intensifying. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to be continuing on with the rest of our main show. Take care, Carlos.
Absolutely, bro. Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Very good.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
Hoped you would never find out, know that you had to know. Pulling what's left of my mind out, trying to tell you so. I've tried to block the light out, know you could feel its glow. I've been here holding my hands out, trying to keep you close. Trying to keep you
I really want to set you free, but I really want to let you be. And a part of me wished I could set myself aside, just let you take the ride, just chalk the rest up to destiny. I could let you believe that the only restraints in life are the size of your dreams. Let you believe each kid grows up with the world at their feet. When I know too well it's open season, I know they're taking stock and raising stocks and raising stock. And I'm simply not here to sit and watch as you learn the lesson all cogs are taught. Keep your head down and keep to task and just keep on blocking the rest of it all out. Just keep on with the rest of the herd of a million adjacent oblivious workers. The forest unseen for the trees, and the trees unseen for the fallout. No, what's more damning, baby, the truth or the ignorance? Fuck it, I honestly wonder if I see the answer so well. Baby, believe me well, I know it's scary, I scare myself. If I could find a way out of my head, I would run like hell. I would ditch this body politic, mindless occupant somewhere far from the dismal abyss. In the tranquil crystalline bliss of the beach, I could rest with the rest of the shells. And if anyone asks I'm anywhere else, if I'm really needed, just light the candle, then read the book, and then ring the bell. Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul. This world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth and then demand 1,000-fold. It's full of greedy pigs who'll eat you out of house and home. They'll strip your bank account and sweep you somewhere down the road, and then return to eat your tent and shitty bike you rode. Your bottled water, only shoes and coat and broken phone. Then smiling in your face, they'll tell you that the shelter's closed.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
Hoped you would never find out, knew that you had to know. Pulling what's left of my mind out, trying to tell you so. I tried to block the light out, knew you could feel its glow. I've been here holding my hands out, trying to keep you close. Trying to keep you
tarnished heart, my little perfect soul. This world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth, then demand 1,000-fold. I tried to block the light just so I could keep you close.